What's going on?
I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I got eyes in the back of my head, I'm seeing. Take me for granted and you know I'm leaving. I'ma take what's mine with the webs I'm weaving. I could take this crowd from seeing to believing. Got a taste for blood and my tongue keeps bleeding. From the words I spit, so sharp, so freezing. So cold, behold, frostbite they feeling. I could tear you apart or I could go heal them. Don't believe in fate, don't believe in ceilings. I just need a taste and my mind starts feeling. I don't pace myself, I grind on kneeling. Got lust for change, I just love the feeling. I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. And I ain't gonna give up. Got too little time, I'ma live up. Head down, push forward through the tough times. Cause anything worth doing is a tough climb. Cause I'ma live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I don't lie at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll still be winning. I live life for the fight, yeah, I'm here to get it. I got drive, got sight, always have a vision. I don't lie at night, I be in my feelings. I'ma be fine, need time, and I'll still be winning. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If they wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon. I can feel the blood creeping up from the heathens. Got will, got fight, got pride, got reason. If you wanna go eat, then you know I'm gon' feed them. If you're coming for me, hope you're ready for a demon.
Where's Bill? Bill?
Bill!
Bill?
Bill!
Where's Bill? He clicks play and he steps away from the studio just that quick.
I hit my mark on time. The entrance was just terrible. We apologize.
What are you gonna do? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel. It is our Sunday night live show, and thank you guys for joining us tonight. Now, I was going to ask him real quick if he didn't run away, that if, God forbid, we ever lose the royalty-free rights with this song, you know, somebody comes back and says, no, I'm going to go ahead and claim it now. We're going to have Bill do, because since he does his own music, he's going to have to create a new song that matches the beat for our intro. Wonder if he can do that for us.
AI. I'm not sure if Bill is actually, well, no, I've met him once, so he's not artificial intelligence. He's flesh and blood, so I take it back.
No, well, we'll touch base with him a little bit later on. But there he is.
Oh, Jesus. Producer. Everybody look busy.
I was checking to see how the snowstorm was, and I that's all on me. But I don't know how it is by you, Ken. But yes, I do write the lyrics, but the AI does write the music. But I can do it if you guys want me to.
If it happens right now, you know, off screen, Ken and I were both jamming to the song. You know,
I saw actually Cody going like this, so he was into it. He was rocking it. So yes.
Yeah, you know, anyway. It's a thing. It grows on you. We tried it out, and everybody was like, I don't know. And now we get comments like, yeah, look forward. Actually, they listen to the song and click off.
You know? Before you guys start, did you watch either of you the UAP show on News Nation last night?
No. I saw it.
So did you think of Mork and Mindy like I did?
Yep. Mork for Mork.
The egg comments and everything else.
Yep. The first thing I thought of was Nanu.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I just wanted to get an idea what you guys were thinking about last night. So anyway, have a great show.
Okay, if you insist.
Bye.
So I guess whatever he's talking about last night, it wasn't news breaking then, obviously. If you're talking about Mork and Mindy, just a few decades old, no big deal. But thank you guys for joining us tonight. We are simulcast on kgradb.com/dead air. On Twitter, you'll find us, or X, you'll find us on Global Radio Live. Also here on YouTube, if you're listening in, you can check us out visually at Dead Air Nation. Also, our Twitter, dead_spectrum, our X, dead_spectrum. And of course, our Patreon and membership. I'm sorry, Ken?
I said Wakanda forever. We're on X.
Yes, it's funny enough that people are never making that connection. The important part with Patreon is you become kind of a family member in a sense. So many of our Patreon members always joining us for our show, for Well That Was Weird, for the Paranormal Couples Haunted Museum. You know, we have just an amazing amount of support, and it's fantastic. It's not a come and go kind of thing. They're there with us through thick and thin, and so we're thrilled. But anyway, it's $3 membership for the Patreon. If you guys want to come and join us, we do a town hall every Monday night. It can be comical, it can be very serious, it can be disastrous, as it has been in the past. So, you guys are wanting to, cough up $3, which think into your normal day, how much you're spending on things, and kind of say, well, I'm getting a heck of a lot more entertainment out of this. I don't know how many times I keep going back through Peacock and not seeing it, and you're still getting billed every month. Over there's something new each and every week. So make sure you guys
find it in the seat cushions, right? Find that in the seat cushions.
This is taking you back. The ashtray of your car. When you weren't using it to smoke anymore. Here, look at this one. Look at this one. Brendan.
Melbourne, Australia, the land down under.
Man, it never shows up anymore. Oh my goodness.
Brendan waxing poetic here tonight. The land down under.
No offense, but we needed to go down a particular road tonight. Ken and I had a extensive discussion about how we were going to approach this. And it basically comes down to the believability in certain aspects of the paranormal. And that goes down a long list, doesn't it, Ken? From procedures to equipment to existence of things. And, what else did we cover, Ken?
Well, like anything else in life, you evolve. If you stay involved in an activity for a long period of time, it doesn't matter what it is. You have to change with the times. You have to change with technology. And it's a journey in this field. There are things that I don't feel the same way about that I might have felt 5 months ago or 5 weeks ago or even 5 minutes ago. So it's kind of a natural evolution. So tonight, whether you've been in this field 50 years, 20 years, 30 years, 10, 5, or 7 minutes, we're going to talk about the changes that we've noticed in that time, good and bad, and try to break this down in sequence by various aspects of the paranormal, from technology to, the interview process and interacting with people. So we get a lot to cover tonight, and I hope that you're going to find it as interesting as we are, because we talked about this, and hey, we think it's a good idea. Whatever it's worth.
About 10 years ago or so, I would imagine, I got in a lot of trouble. And of course, I didn't care then. I don't care now. But I was on stage in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and I made a certain statement apologizing for the paranormal, that we failed society. We failed those of you out there who were hoping for and looking for answers, in the sense that it became too commercialized. It became too, grab the spotlight. And, I said it's time to, taking a quote from Game of Thrones, break the wheel. Don't go through the same cycle over and over again. Sometimes revisiting this subject, this topic, is important to just say, look, let's not go along just to get along. Sometimes it's important to shake up the foundation and say, these are the things that need to be addressed, and maybe certain things that need to be thrown out. Certainly some things that we absolutely need to keep in this field. So with our panel tonight, maybe we can get some of that resolution. And you guys, of course, in chat are always welcome to, as I'll scan what you all are saying, anything that you want to input too. But we do have some distinguished guests joining us tonight. Ken, if you want to go ahead and do the introductions.
I'd love to. I would just add to that, the reason that we call this, hi Glenn, the reason that we call this No Offense is that there may be things that we say aren't important anymore that you think there are. And believe me, we're not here to be the final word on everything. But again, as time moves on, maybe there's a piece of equipment that you've come to believe doesn't do exactly what it does. So it stays in the case at this point. But these are the kind of things that we're going to talk about, how we've changed our minds and how we've evolved. So if we say anything about, anything from dowsing rods to spirit boxes, weigh in, let us know. But we're certainly not precluding anybody from doing anything. These are just our feelings. Okay, so without further ado, a couple of people that we reached out today to bring on to give us some of their input, their background, and how this field has changed. So first, from the great state of Pennsylvania, we want to welcome in 60 inches of snow worth, but they're getting along just fine. A lot of shoveling going on. But Dan and Celine, St. Marie, welcome to Dead Air. Okay, they unmute. Oh. You're on mute.
There we go.
That's better. Now we got you. So, welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're looking forward to weighing in on some of these things in your perspective. And also, coming to us from the great state of, I think it's Rhode Island tonight. I'm not sure.
Or Panic.
But he was dancing up a storm backstage. And you know him by his code name, Elvis. This is Cody Ray Desbiens.
Wow. I was vibing to the theme song. I like the theme song. I hope you don't change it.
Yeah, no, we were all rocking out backstage. Looked like a, bunch of idiots, but, we're doing seat dancing. That's when you're at the club, you really don't want to hit the floor, so you just sit in your seat. And this is what you do.
I like it. This is weird. I'm by myself, which is like the first time in years that I've been by myself on a live stream.
Thank God.
This is Satori.
Well, you can get a word in now.
Yeah, I didn't say that. You said that.
When I say that out loud, I meant to just think it.
Cody, you can say it now. It's safe here.
Yeah. If at any time you're being held hostage, just blink Morse code SOS. Let us know.
Everything is perfectly fine.
Call my number and order a pizza. The safe word is pepperoni tonight.
But she's doing good. Right. She just has adding tonight. Yeah. So she's fine. She just has adding.
Where do you want to get started on this thing?
Yeah, I think a lot of the times, again, there is this, I don't know, urban legend in the sense that, everything that goes on out there, thanks to social media, is immediate. It's active. Everything that we do seems to work to be able to prove or disprove the existence of fill in the blank here. There's a lot of different categories under this umbrella known as the paranormal, but we try to find, things that are going to be, we're looking for what? Redundancy, consistency, and reliability into a lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the places that we go, a lot of the equipment that we use. And, we wanted to start off with the aspect of equipment, something that I know, Cody, you're very familiar with, Ken, you're very familiar with, Dan and Celine. The magical, mystical, wonderful device, the K2. Should they be buried at this point? Cody?
Well, I think the K2 meters have a use in the paranormal for sure, especially with groups that do events and things like that for somebody new coming into the field and just learning. Of course, it's a good starter piece of equipment. If you don't want to spend a lot of money, they're rather inexpensive now, which is pretty good. So I guess it depends what you're using them for. If you're doing events with them and stuff like that with the public, I think they're great. If you're getting started, I think they're awesome. Because you can use them for simple communication. Of course, if you're a more serious investigator, I think there's absolutely better options if you want to go down the route of EMF and looking for fluctuations and things like that. So I think there is a good use for them. If you want to get a quick baseline, that's great. If you have multiple of them, I think they're a good communication tool. One's for, blink the left one for yes, the right one for no, stuff like that. But I do think that sometimes they are used in the wrong way, I guess you could say. But I'll stick with that. There's definitely better options for EMF detection than a K2 meter.
And George popped out for a minute. I was going to say, Dan and Celine, at one point, and maybe the spirit box is catching up now a little bit, but at one point the K2 was by far the biggest selling piece of equipment in my lifetime. Other than, basic, digital recorders. But as far as a specialty item, the K2 at one point, going back to, I guess the first time we saw it was Chris Fleming on the Ghost Hunter show. And I believe they were on Cielo Drive. And they were doing David Oman's house, I believe, next to the Sharon Tate, which is, her house isn't there anymore. But this was the thing, and everybody had to have one. And like any evolution of everything, we learned that outside influences can trigger this device. And I think we eventually got to that point where we understood that these outside forces could create false positives. So in a way, whether you use them or not, that's kind of evolving a little bit and at least learning the limitations.
Yeah, I mean, that was the first piece of equipment that we actually bought for our, what we do going around. And it took some learning how to use it and what we needed to do so that we didn't have issues with it. And it's certainly not something that we go to right away anymore. But yeah, you have to, with anything, you have to learn limitations of it and how it's affected in the environment. And that's an important thing. So like if we're going to pull it out and use it, Celine always goes around and walks all throughout the room without doing anything prior to that, seeing where there's natural EMF in the room that we're going to have issues with. And so to stay away from those areas, besides having, what personal devices people might have on them that can affect them, because people forget about that as well. Cell phones and watches, electronic watches and things like that can affect them as well.
Yeah, I mean, and guys, do you not think that we don't get enough credit for knowing that? Because as soon as a video pops up and one's on the screen, somebody's immediately saying, walkie-talkies can trigger it. Cell phones are triggering it. Can trigger it. Do you think that we don't get enough credit for yes, we know that. We know that. We try to place them strategically in certain positions in airplane mode, and nobody's using a walkie. So when using those things, sometimes, they kind of latched on to the reason that they're fallible. And I couldn't agree more. If you want to use them, that's fine. But we do understand that they can be influenced by external forces. So sometimes I think we don't get enough credit for understanding the equipment to the level that we do. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's
I think so. And it's not just the K2. I think 90% of the equipment that's out there can be, influenced by normal explanations, just in a different way. Like, when I first joined Rise Up, one of the first things Ken taught me was about recorder placement. Placing a digital recorder down on certain surfaces can cause, false positives and make it sound like you're hearing voices if you set the recorder down on a metal surface versus a wooden surface. You know what I mean? So, with temperature sensors and things like that, depending on where you place them in a room, drafts can cause false positives and things like that. So I think most of the equipment out there, you have to have some sort of knowledge on how it's collecting its data and working, so you avoid those false positives. With that being said, the K2 is definitely one that's more sensitive than some of the other pieces of equipment, but I think all of it, for the most part, has different ways that it can be influenced by the normal environment.
Yeah. And just a fun fact for everybody, a K2 is a single axis EMF meter and the sensors on the left-hand side. So now you know. But again, all right, so let's branch out a little bit because there's a bunch of things. There are EMF meters, there are REM pods, and I'm talking about things that have been around for the last 20 years or beyond. And how do you view all these things when they're placed strategically around a room or in a doorway? Is it just a case where it is what it is? Because one of these things lights up or goes beep and people start losing their minds. But I think most of us understand that it's just take a breath. It's just something that has to be corroborated with something else, So this is why I say I think that we don't get enough credit for understanding that, these things aren't the be all and end all. There is no such thing as a ghost detector. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Well, they definitely sell them, that's for sure.
and that's what they sell them as. They sell them as ghost detectors. You have to get all these different things to be able to detect the ghosts when you go out and investigating. But they're just different tools to use in your investigation. And if you're wanting to find intelligent entities and intelligent spirits that you're dealing with, as opposed to residual, you need to get some repertoire set up with wherever you're at and get some confirmation and get some positive feedback from the investigations. That's through the use of questions in digital visual recordings, or having the yes/no eggs that we picked up from friends, which I think are great things to try to do that. But just going from it from an overall perspective, it's everything put together is what you're trying to look at and see to make your decision. Is there something here or is something not? And all these gadgets are just different tools. And now they don't detect ghosts. They detect other things that might indicate that you're dealing with spirits. I mean, and somebody just put up a comment, the apps on their phones. Those are, I don't have any faith in those things at all. I don't think we downloaded a couple, but didn't like them at all. I don't think they do anything for us. I think they're just, for fun.
Well, I mean, my own opinion on that is I prefer a dedicated piece of equipment, whatever they are. I mean, we call them equipment, you call them gear, whatever you want to do. But now understand, before, George gets back into this, I just want to make one quick point. We understand that you out there and a lot of these pieces of equipment are going to say, oh, yeah, but one time I used this, and trust me what I tell you, us too. There have been times where I've used, especially back in the beginning, a K2 meter and asked for the left and the right in sequence to trigger. And the person holding one of them was from Kent, England. Nothing to do with us. And there were no walkie-talkies. And even if there were, they're not that finite that you can aim them at something that's only 6 inches or so away. So sure, all of these things we're talking about, we've all had instances where we went, huh, well, that's weird. So, I mean, we're kind of in the same boat, right? We're not talking down at anything, but we're talking like in generalities.
But we're bringing up the topic then, really, of application, and you can take any one of the different pieces of equipment, any tool in your toolbox when you're doing an investigation. And there are moments that are just simply unexplainable. Doesn't matter if it's a K2, doesn't matter if it's a REM pod, doesn't matter if it is uh, a spirit box. There are things that you just cannot explain. The thing that we are missing, I think, in an investigation is consistency. That's where it starts to get a little bit gray. The next one I was going to bring up, and I'd like to hear everyone's thoughts on it, is the flashlight. Bringing in a flashlight into these investigations. We've talked about it ad nauseum, about how it's been debunked, how it works, why it works. But you've seen circumstances where the responses seem to be intelligent responses, but seems is the key word in that too, because there is a good possibility with a lot of these devices in communication that subconsciously you start building a timing mechanism in your head as if you already know in 40 seconds that flashlight's going to turn back on. You already know that there's a pattern with the K2 from whatever signal is coming in from the local police station to a boat on the water broadcasting, and you start to set that in motion as well. So again, the biggest thing for me in regards to any of those is how common is that communication versus that random time where you are in sync with the energy that's going across that device, man-made energy, not spiritual energy. So I think a good portion of it tends to be false positives with what we tend to collect from that. Any of you guys want to comment on the flashlight part of it? Dan, Celine?
I've actually never done it.
You're a rare bird.
Oh, yes.
Why haven't you? Did you already come across the information regarding the flashlight?
I've heard a lot of things about it.
Watching me?
Maybe. But I don't know. Never trusted it, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know. I guess it just never kind of appealed to me. I have my background is science background, strong science background, and so I look for things that are measurable and quantifiable, and I like that, and like being able to know why the piece of equipment's reacting to what it is, and the few things I've seen done with the flashlights, I've just never really, I don't know.
It's just not for us.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing to say.
In terms of the fallacy of the flashlight, we understand that, this was another one of those techniques that everybody saw and everybody tried, and there's no crime in that. There's absolutely no crime in that. But as far as the fallacy of the flashlight, Cody can break it down for you because he knows all too well. We've talked about flashlights and everything, but Cody, there are two main reasons these things go off. You want to break that down. And again, it's like sometimes we don't get enough credit for understanding what can go wrong. So for anybody who doesn't know, Cody, let them know. Like, what can go wrong with unscrewing a mag light and asking it to turn on?
Yeah, so the whole point of the flashlight thing, I guess the setup for it is, like Ken said, you unscrew the top of the light, so it's the light just turns on a tiny bit and then shuts off. So, and the whole legitimate reason as to why the flashlight blinks on and off varies on the humidity in the room and the temperature, and basically what's happening is because that spring is so close to the battery, it can expand and contract and cause a quick flicker on and off, and it may seem like you're having a very intelligent conversation with a spirit. And I've done them before. I've communicated, attempted to communicate that way when I was first starting off with the first team I was with, and it seemed like we were having some very intelligent, conversations. But I think when you have a normal explanation that is that obvious, I think it's difficult to use that method, from that point on, because the variable is just way too huge for it to not be, paranormal. I will say one time that I found very interesting that had to do with a flashlight is Ken and I were investigating the annex building of Smith's Castle in Rhode Island, and Ken had his flashlight on the table in front of us, and we were, talking to Spirit, doing an EVP session, and all of a sudden that flashlight literally clicked on, like all by itself. And so if they can do that, then why not just have them turn the flashlight on and off that way? That was one of the most impressive things I've seen with a flashlight. So and maybe you can have an intelligent conversation that way, but like I said, the normal explanation is just way too big for it to be legitimate.
And there's one situation.
The thing about the flashlight, like Cody said, we didn't unscrew it; it just clicked. You know what I mean? So that's one thing. But the other thing, Dan, I want to make clear real quick is a lot of times you see these things go on and off. What we always want to know is how many times did you have to ask that question before it turned on?
Yeah, and the other thing, the one situation that I haven't seen, but I probably saw on a show or something, is that they had multiple flashlights set up like this, so you could say, "Can you turn the one on the left on now to indicate yes to this question? Okay, can you turn the one on the right on to indicate yes?" And give it an additional variable in there to get rid of the randomness of the spring expanding because of environmental considerations and completing the circuit, so that there's some other aspect to it, so that they're identifying which flashlight it's doing. But I still think that it's just I'm not too certain on it.
Yeah, even in that situation, again, I was talking about the mental programming where you get in sync, and same situation again. Subconsciously this one's going to go off in 40 seconds. Subconsciously this one's going to go off 20 seconds after that. Unless they are completely unscrewed and screwed back together at the same time. That again, it lends towards the incredulity of evidence. That's the hard part for me. Unless you go do it to the right, now just do it to the right again, not the left one. Keep it in that sense. There's a little bit more believability, because if you switch to the other one and that one goes off, that denotes intelligence.
Yeah. If you spend $2 on a flashlight, or $60 on a K2, or $200 on a REM pod, you have to be willing to test them under certain conditions. And I know it's going to break your heart if you find out all these things can affect a REM pod or an EMF meter, and you're going to say, man, I just spent a lot of money for nothing. Not necessarily. It's just a matter of knowing how things can go sideways. That's all. For the purpose, they're not ghost detectors, but there's nothing wrong with taking that piece of equipment, trying different things to trigger it, and finding out what kind of external things. How do you think we learn to turn your cell phones off or put them on airplane mode? Or don't you? By trial and error. So I strongly suggest anything that you're using that you feel has given you positive results, that's fine. But don't turn a blind eye to it. Okay. Don't just like, oh, we got a ghost. Take another step. And that's what we mean by evolving. Don't be afraid to, self-defeat yourself, And this
that's
is
kind
why we always say, read some reviews on the equipment, find out from somebody else who has it. Don't go break the bank. That's
Yeah.
all.
And this brings up a good point, thinking about how you set up the experiments that you're doing. So we talk about that we're doing experiments, and there's a whole field called experimental design. So what you're doing, you really should put some thought in ahead of time. How do I want to go about setting up what I'm going to be doing in this investigation and how I'm going to be doing it, what types of questions you're going to ask, even the nature of the questions that you ask. I learned something last night. We went to the Ohio State Reformatory last night, and interesting trip. It was cold as all get out, frigid. So it wasn't very active, but still learned some good techniques with thinking about questions to ask. And not asking yes and no questions for using a spirit box, because you can get random yes and no's all the time, but ask specific questions and how you do it, and give an answer beforehand. Like, say, if you're going to ask, how many don't ask how many kids you have, what was your kid's name? Something along those lines. Or, I like chocolate ice cream. What do you like? So if you're getting random answers back from a spirit box, you can put context to it, as opposed to hearing a word on the spirit box and then fitting it into your narrative that's already defined.
Yeah, I have a problem with that.
So that if you ask, and I guess the thing is being very specific in your questions, so that a random word will not fit the narrative that you're trying to create, so that you're looking for a very specific answer.
Does it fit the mold, as we've talked about before, the two different titles, two different nomenclatures? Ghost hunting, paranormal investigating. Paranormal investigating is going into a location to verify the existence of spirit in that property. Ghost hunting is going into a place that's already been verified to collect data and collect evidence. So would you say that the bulk of those devices, electronic devices, during an investigation are more pertinent to that paranormal investigating, and the ghost hunting would be to that next level, be it a spirit box for communication, or a psychic medium for communication, or the simple digital audio recorder? Would you split the two, or is it still begin establishing with number one? Because unfortunately, and somebody in the chat mentioned it, their entire premise of their investigation was based upon the digital data, the electronic data that was coming across, these things lighting up, not lighting up, multiple things lighting up, but they weren't really establishing what it was past that point in time. Cody, what do you think on that?
Well, I look at it, and this might be what you're explaining, but this is the way I look at it. I look at it, definitely there's two different categories, and one is, the more entertainment side of ghost hunting. Maybe you watch the shows and you want to go do it for a night in the fall, when it's really popular near Halloween. And then there's the other side where you're either part of a group or you're solo and want to go out and, collect your own data for your own question answering. So I think there's two different categories, and I think a lot of the equipment kind of falls to either side, but can be used on both sides. I think, the more serious investigators, that's what I would call a paranormal investigator, and I would put the ghost hunters into the category of the autumn, fall, buying a ticket to an event, that type of thing. So I think the apps and spirit boxes and stuff. For me, this is just my personal opinions, and you may think completely different. But like the ghost box and apps and and like an Ovulus and stuff like that would fall into the more entertainment side of ghost hunting for me. But at the same time, Spirit Box, I mean, Satori and I, we've had some great results using Estes method, and that's kind of new for us. I mean, I never really put, you know, that much faith into Spirit Box before we started doing that method. And then on the flip side of things, and more on the investigative side, stuff that data logs its findings, records its findings, barometric pressure, humidity, temperature, all the atmospheric conditions, I think kind of falls into the more serious side of things. Because now you're documenting a room and trying to actually collect data for your own research. So I think there's two categories: the entertainment side of things and actually trying to figure something out. So I think that's where most of the stuff kind of falls into, but it's all interchangeable. I mean, you can kind of use things to back each other up, you know?
Yeah. So switching gears a little bit, I wanted to ask, let's go into the investigation process now. And again, things change, you know. So I guess the question is, in today's culture and society, right, has the interview process changed to reflect what's considered normal today? Because back in the day, basically, tell me your story. And then we kind of evolved to asking about, it's awkward and it's a sensitive thing, but we ask about drug use, alcohol use. We ask about the family dynamics. And like I say, these are kind of awkward questions, but you're trying to get as much information as you can, especially when you're bringing people into that home. You don't want to set yourself up in a bad situation, but our society is a little different now. So is there anything in that interview process that concerns you right now, or anything that typically you would ask that maybe you don't ask now because everything triggers everybody? You know, so does the interview process itself get a little weaker and more general than going specifically and asking some difficult questions?
You want me to go?
Yeah, because I mean, me and Celine have been doing this for, you know, several years now, but we don't go into private homes and do investigations of that nature. We go to different locations and enjoy doing the investigations with people like Cody and Satori and other people. And then we also do investigations of haunted items that we own in our own home and do that. So we don't really have an interview process that we go through like Cody would have going into a house. So I'll let Cody take care of this one.
So probably the biggest thing is social media. That has affected the paranormal field greatly within the past decade or so. And you know, I've noticed it, especially within the past 5 or 6 years. There's definitely been a switch. Even with people reaching out to investigate their own homes, there's been a decline. Talking with other paranormal groups across the country, there's been less and less actual case requests because we're seeing a turn of individuals wanting to try investigating themselves.
DIY.
Seeing what's that, Ken?
DIY investigation.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of people are going on different social media platforms and learning how to investigate that way and saying, okay, I don't need to call a group in, I'm just going to do it myself. And then at the same time, you can make content out of that. You can make your own channel and record your own ghost in your own house now. So we've noticed a decline on case requests, but the requests that do come in, that's of course one of the big questions. It used to be, do you watch the ghost hunting shows on TV? Because we found that was a big influence. If you watch the ghost hunting shows, you are more likely to think that we go to a house. Ken knows this. Whether it was a TAPS case or a Rise Up case, the first thing we're doing is going over to your DVD shelf and seeing if you have all the seasons of Ghost Hunters or Ghost Adventures, and that kind of leads us down a path of, okay, what's really going on here? Are these people just a fan of the idea of having a haunted house, or is there something really going on here? So now that question kind of turned into, what social media channels are you watching these days? What YouTube channel are you watching these days? And that kind of would lead you down the same path, I guess. It's just kind of switched from television to YouTube and streaming services now. So that's probably the big change. Is just the whole social media stuff,
Yeah. One of the questions that I ask now that I never asked, and I never cared about it, is, have you had another paranormal group into this location? It doesn't matter, if it's a house, a public building, because I'm always wary. I mean, I don't care if you tell me who they are or you don't tell me who they are. If you want to volunteer it, that's fine. But I may look at it, recognize the group, and say, well, they're good. Or I may recognize the group and say they're not so good. But the basic thing is, I want to know if you've been going through the phone book with paranormal investigation teams, and maybe they didn't tell you what you want to hear, so you're going to keep trying until you get somebody that co-signs what could be, a really frivolous claim. I mean, we've had those, growling in the house, got your heater turning on, but they're looking for somebody to co-sign what it is that they've self-diagnosed themselves. I have this in the house or that in the house. And maybe they do. I can't come in for 6 hours and experience everything you have in 20 years. But that's a question that I ask now, because so many groups, so many people may be looking for a haunting. Maybe it makes them feel unique. I don't know. But I don't want to be like one in a long line of investigators you've had come in, because I have to ask myself why. Why are we the 10th group that's come into this house? So there's a lot of questions, and there are a lot of triggers. We don't ask, there's certain things we didn't think twice about: the drinking, the drugs, the religion, the family dynamics. But our culture's changed, so a lot of times you have to feel your way around an interview and see if there's some trust built up first before I hit you wham with a question. You're like, how dare you? I'm triggered. I'm offended. And it's like, it's a little tougher now.
I couldn't imagine having to try to tiptoe around those types of issues and doing something like this. I think that's I can feel your pain, Ken. I would not want to have to do that, because if they are venue shopping, trying to get the answer that they want, that's something you probably want to stay away from with as far as possible. It's not going to do anybody any good.
And even what Cody said, watching all the ghost shows and just trying to get one of them in there, Yeah, no.
Yeah, that's one of the things I miss about the paranormal conventions that, like, I remember like the first iterations of the Ocean State Paracon that Rise Up used to do. There was more, instead of like craft vendors and equipment, people selling equipment and stuff, the majority of people who had a spot at these conventions were paranormal teams. There was literally dozens of paranormal teams at these conventions, all just, they would bring a TV and show their evidence, and everyone kind of talked to each other. And those are the places that we'd find out about the clients that had all of the teams that were at the convention already in their house. And we're like, oh, you were there too, and you were there too. So there was that community where you could talk to each other, and figure out, who's been at certain places and share different ideas and stuff like that. And over the years, we've kind of seen that kind of go away, where paranormal teams don't really go and set up tables at conventions as much. as they used to in the past. So there's been that shift too, which is interesting to look at.
Yeah. A thing I also, just kind of move this along. There's a lot to cover. This was actually going to be Satori's question, but she can yell it to you from the side if she wants. I think it's always been around, but there's a growing reliance on metaphysics these days. A lot more people are into dowsing rods, crystals, pendulums. Nothing new. They've been around forever. But I'm just wondering, like, from that perspective of somebody who might engage in that, how they believe that using those things affect people physically, spiritually, psychologically, whether it's a ritual you do of protection, whatever your thing is, you do you. But a lot of people use those. And as someone who doesn't, typically the only thing I've used is dowsing rods to find underground water, and they work, trust me. But I've never used them to find spirits or anything, and that's fine. But for somebody who's a practitioner of them, how do you view them as far as the process? Again, psychologically, physically, crystals are supposed to somehow charge you, I guess. I'm speaking from ignorance here. But spiritually, however it is, how do they fit into investigations? Because more and more people are using it than in the past, in my opinion, just from 10,000 feet.
Go ahead, Dan. And Celine. So Satori gave me this necklace to wear. She knew I was going to be talking to George tonight, so this is supposed to protect me from him.
Hey,
You're passing the buck.
That's a nice time.
I think it's got a listening. I think it's got a listening device in it. I think he's wearing a wire, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seeing something just flew at him.
yeah, obviously he's not protected by projectiles, that's for sure.
Satori is just off camera throwing her comments at him that he's supposed to open up and read them.
I
Got a
could.
low jack in that thing. Hey, anybody want to touch that with a 2-foot pole before we go to break?
Yeah, I'll comment on it because my views have changed on that, to be quite honest. And Satori's a part of that, I think, a little bit. And our friend Chris is also a part of that, changing my viewpoints on that, because my background is geology. So, rocks and minerals. I've got a basement full of rocks and crystals and all that stuff. But I never looked at them from the paranormal side of the world or the spiritual side of the world, or gave it much thought. They were just rocks. They were nice to look at. They're cool. I can tell you where they formed, where they came from, all that fun stuff. But being around people like Satori and Chris, they have passionate interest in these, and I think a lot of what we do is very psychological in nature in these investigations. And if it helps somebody center themselves for whatever reason, in whatever way, so that they can better focus on what they're doing and what they're doing, I think, that can be a good thing. And if different minerals help them do that, different crystals help them focus in different ways, great, go for it. I've got this beautiful black obsidian slab that's polished, and use it for the mirrors. I forget even what it's called because I don't really do it at all. But like a crystal ball gazing, and Chris and Satori both have talked about this with me, and it's just a way of getting your mind centered and focused. And I think that goes a long way, because if you can't get your mind centered and focused on what you're doing, you're not going to be open to any of the experiences that we have in these different places. Last night, it was so cold. It was frigid. It was like 20 degrees out, and we're damp in there. And everybody was so, intent on being cold. We didn't have a lot of experiences going on. in a place that is known for a lot of experiences going on at the Ohio State Reformatory. I mean, there's just a lot that happens there, but there wasn't a whole lot going on there. And I think everybody's mind was off in a different area, and so we couldn't focus on that. So Satori made a comment about intention, and I think if that helps somebody get that intention going and centers their mind and their well-being, great, it works for them, because like we said, these are all different tools, and we just need to look at the entirety of the tools.
You don't have to worry. She's not going to throw anything at you.
Yeah, I'm safe. I can't get hit by Satori. Only Cody can. So, but
We've got about a minute and a half. If you want to respond, I'd be careful.
So I also wasn't a big I guess subscriber to crystals and things like that until I met Satori, and I definitely see the interest and the meanings behind it now, and I definitely wear them. I'm like, hey, if there's a possibility that it's going to do something, I'm game. So I have bracelets and stuff, and I like wearing the necklace once in a while, a different crystal necklace and stuff like that. I definitely think that intention is everything. I could believe in this remote right here that's going to protect me, and I think that would do something. That's my belief system. But I do believe that some individuals rely a lot on crystal and things like that, and they've had some good results. And I think I'm definitely more of a subscriber to it now than I was in the past.
Okay, so are you saying some of it is a placebo effect?
I think it can definitely be viewed that way for sure.
It's no different than an athlete who never changes their lucky socks.
Yeah, exactly. But then you have, like the crystals inside of watches that are able to keep the frequency going correctly and stuff. So I definitely think there is energy there that is part of the equation. You know what I mean? And I think it can definitely influence in certain ways your investigation.
And keep in mind how many different places we go to investigate and talk about how the limestone
exactly
really creates that effect. So well, we got to go to break, guys. Here we get back on the other side. We've got a lot more to talk about with regards to, well, no offense, cryptids. So we will be back on the other side of our break. You're watching Dead or Alive on the Dead or Full Spectrum channel. Stay with us.
Hey members, the new KGRA DB app is now available on iOS and Android devices. Gain on-demand access to any KGRA DB programming. Download any show directly to your mobile device to listen or watch on the go. Go to the App Store and search KGRA DB.
As UFO reports come in from around the world, the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON, is there. We continue to explore new cases and build our massive database. We share our information with the world in a number of ways. If you would like to be part of our investigative team, you are always welcome. What could be more exciting than exploring the UFO question firsthand? Join MUFON, find your friends.
You're listening to the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. We provide unparalleled coverage of trending news in the world of ufology, cryptozoology, and paranormal phenomenon. Whether you're watching our video live stream or listening to one of our audio programs, you are getting the best from world-renowned researchers and hosts, guiding you through topics the mainstream won't touch. Miss one of your favorite programs? No problem. Head over to the members area at kgradb.com for access to our massive library of award-winning content. Make contact, stay connected. Only at kgradb.com.
Get an opportunity to be a part of our Patreon membership list, and everybody should be on there. Oh, good. Celine and Dan are on that list. And special guests joining us from time to time on our Monday Town Hall, including on occasion Cody and Satori have been over there. So make sure that you guys get a chance to stop by. That's Dead or Paranormal on Patreon. Love to have you guys join the family, to be sure. Welcome back to the second hour of our show tonight. No offense, but let's go down that next rabbit hole, guys, which is regards to cryptids. And there's so many directions that we can go with this. Their affiliation with each other, the existence at all. Where you draw the line as paranormal enthusiasts or investigators. Not everyone that does ghost hunting tends to also, or paranormal investigating tends to also investigate the cryptids. But even the interest, because it's under that huge umbrella, where do you guys fall as far as, and I'm going to actually start off with Ken right up here up top with his thoughts on it. And do you have a split in which ones you think are legitimate and which ones are not?
Yeah, I do. I can give you, and I've given lots of presentations on this. I can make a compelling argument for the existence of a bipedal primate, Bigfoot, right? I can't give you a compelling argument on something like a Loch Ness Monster because there'd have to be 5,000 of them, okay, to last 10,000 years, and there's just not enough food in Loch Ness to support a creature that big. So some of it comes down to biology, geology, and common sense. But I don't discount some of the credible reports of, you know, a Sasquatch, Bigfoot, swamp ape, Almas, Ohio grassman, whatever you want to call it. But I'm not coming down on, I mean, a lot of these things are folklorish, so you have to separate those two. But there have been some very, very credible reports that have come in from people who I believe aren't seeing things. You know, I wish we had a little better photographs. I'll go back to the comic Mitch Hedberg, who once says that it's not so much the pictures. He believes Bigfoot is just a blurry animal. But yeah, I draw a distinction in some things that I think are feasible, that may be what they call relic animals, because so many species disappear every year and more are found every year. And it's not necessarily some giant ape. It could be a lizard, an inch long in the Amazon that no one's ever seen before. So you can't discount that, I don't think. But I think there is a distinction between, you know, folklore and things like that. But sometimes you got to go back to Native American culture. They've been seeing these things for thousands of years. So there's something there.
Cody, it's kind of hard to distinguish whether or not you live with a violent poltergeist or a banshee, but do certain, I know she's off right now giving dirty looks off screen.
You might be becoming a psychic.
I think we're all psychic right now because we all know exactly what he's doing.
Do you happen to have your own opinions on that, including Bigfoot, what Ken was talking about? But yes, also some the Wailing Banshee to New Jersey Devil, and I believe you've come across some of that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely investigated reports of different cryptid sightings and things like that. I'm a big fan. I love the lore. I love learning about different cryptids. I love like the wood devils in New Hampshire. Of course, you have sightings of champ in Vermont and New York and Lake Champlain. And in Pennsylvania, one of my favorite cryptids is the squonk. They have a whole festival for the squonk. The Loveland frog monster in Ohio. So I definitely love the lore and the stories. I definitely think there, like Ken was saying, there's the vegetable man. I believe he's in West Virginia. Like I think there's definitely some cryptids.
I know you're a big frog guy. You're a big Loveland frog guy.
I love the Loveland frog man. Yeah, he's awesome. Right. But I definitely think there are some cryptids that there's some new ones that have popped up in recent years that I believe are just trying to fall into the popularity of it all, because there are a lot of these conferences that are popping up within the past few years that revolve around whatever state's cryptid is. Of course, the one for Mothman is huge. I mean, that one gets bigger and bigger every year. Literally thousands and thousands of people come out to that every single year. But we have had some interesting investigations and some interesting, phone calls. I know Ken has a few stories of people, calling up and claiming that they're seeing some strange things, and some of the stories are quite comical. But of course, we always try to help out in any way that we can, because sometimes people really believe that they've experienced these things. Yeah, see, isn't he awesome? That's awesome. That's really cool. I would love to meet him. I hope he's real. I really hope he's real.
He looks like a beer mascot.
He has to go out deeper. He has to go out deeper, so he's knee deep.
The squonk is better. I like the squonk. The squonk is better looking. I think he's kind of cool. He's over by Dan and Celine.
I'm gonna have to look into that.
Yeah,
I've heard of the squonk.
I'm right here.
Yeah, they have no. The squonk is always sad.
The squonk is a big crybaby. Google it.
Oh yeah, that's me.
But yeah, no, I love the whole idea of cryptids and things like that. I love the ones that date back, generations. See, there's the squonk.
That's the squonk.
You just want to give him a hug. Make him happy.
Looks like a wet sheepdog.
Looks like a cross between a hairless cat and a pug.
No, it could be one with the barrel.
Oh,
it's big.
Oh, a Saint Bernard.
Yeah, a hairless one.
I definitely think that some of the cryptid stories originated from misidentification of certain animals, like sick animals and things like that.
Yeah.
And you can't really discount it. I mean, you have to go to you can't make blanket statements, because you can't just say all cryptids are bogus and not real. That's just ridiculous, because you're just dismissing everything, and you can't really do that. You have to really look at them on a one-on-one basis and look what the evidence is. I'm not a strong follower of cryptids. I used to be as a kid. I mean, I loved Bigfoot stories when I was a kid growing up, and all the other ones. And my dad worked for the U.S. Air Force, and he used to go around to all the different bases in the U.S. because he was with Logistics Command. I was always after him. What's that Area 51? Is Bigfoot at Area 51? And he would never tell me. He'd never give me a straight answer. But I can't, and going back to as a scientist, as you really have to look at them on a case-by-case basis. And there's a large knowledge base that tells us there are critters out there that we have not seen
Yes.
for millions of years, and that suddenly show up because we are not in those environments, or those environments are not places we can get to readily. And so the idea that there's animals out there that we have not been able to track down and find is perfectly reasonable to me. I mean, that's just a given. There's a fish that is so, oh my God. That's what it's supposed to look like. That is.
I think
it's got a long snout like an aardvark almost.
I think the con that they have near you is called Squonkapalooza or something like that. And I've always wanted to go to it. Yeah.
I know there's a Bigfoot festival. There's a Bigfoot festival not far from us down in, I want to say, Marionville in Pennsylvania. It's really big. It's like 20,000, 30,000 people go to it because it's in the middle of the forest. Wow. This little town, it's a big festival for them. But no, I can't discount that, because I know, like, as a geologist, there's a fish that was thought to be extinct for millions of years, the coelacanth, and some fishermen brought it in the 50s off the coast of Africa down by Madagascar, and they found it, and it turns out that there is a strong population of them down there, and it's this big ugly fish, but it's a deep sea fish, and thought it was extinct for millions of years. It was in the fossil record, but we had no current knowledge of them until the 50s. Now we know where they're at. So I don't discount them at all. I think we just have to find them and look at them on a case-by-case basis. And the folklore behind them is just fabulous. I mean, to go back and read the stories, and some of the stories, because they go back into the Native American, not only the Native American folklore, but throughout the entire world. You go look at the indigenous peoples' folklore in Australia and in Africa. You know, it's all over. Celine keeps moving the cameras because she can smoke without being on camera. So it's kind of funny, but yeah, I think it's there. And the like you said, Cody, the folklore is great.
Yeah, it's my favorite part.
Yeah, the coelacanth is off that list now. I mean, cryptids are basically animals that haven't been cataloged, that are said to exist. But coelacanth off the list now. I'm going to switch gears again, because getting back to the difference between now and then, get off my lawn. One of the biggest changes, I think, is community and networking. Way back in the day, I mean, the idea of paranormal investigation, ghost hunting was pretty much a niche thing. And there were conferences back then, meetups, and they were usually in a VFW somewhere. And, you know, if 50 people showed up, you thought it was a great time. But now all of a sudden, I mean, literally for some of these conferences and events, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of people who show up to these things. So Cody is somebody that goes to a lot more. I mean, I ran one, but, you know, not to the point we had 5,000 people coming in, but you've been to them, Dan and Celine, you know, you work at one. We just came back from New Jersey. Maybe low-hanging fruit here, but what do you attribute to that, the growth and the proliferation? And I know we lose some every year because it's expensive and people can lose their shirt on these things. So the strongest survive, I guess. But what do you attribute suddenly we're going from a VFW hall to like huge amphitheaters on this thing?
The internet.
What happened?
I think it's the internet. I think because people are putting their videos out there more, and then you have them putting up their paracons up on the internet and everything else, that it gets out there more. Before, we didn't have any of this. We had a telephone.
Mm-hmm. Stanton. So, Cody, is this just the idea that of people, like-minded people, finding their tribe, getting together, and being able to talk about these things? And I mean, the other part of this, how much of this really is that, and how much of it is the other change, the commercialization of the paranormal, because, I mean, they're not all obviously charity events. I salute the ones that are, that go to the community and a greater good. But those two things together, they have changed dramatically, you know, over decades now.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, they're definitely a dime a dozen these days. They're popping up everywhere, and there are different intentions, behind running them. A lot of people, you know, start them up because of course they have an interest and want to bring people together, which I think is great. You have some that of course see it as a business opportunity, which I guess is also okay, and then you have the ones that do it for charity, and definitely God bless them. People like John and Chris with New Jersey Paranormal, that is a huge shout out to them. That event is awesome and one of our favorites that we do every single year. So it definitely seems that these days, and like I was mentioning before, when I brought up the paranormal, the Ocean State Paracon, how you used to see a lot of paranormal teams going, to this place, to these types of things, to converse and talk amongst each other and share what they were doing. Now it seems to be more of a year to go to these conferences. Like Michigan was, have to get out there, but people would save their money all year and use that as like their vacation, as almost like a party. They've turned more into like parties and entertainment, which is great, which is fun. So there's definitely been a shift. I think the internet absolutely plays a huge part in a lot of this, and the type of guests that appear at these conferences are also changing. I've noticed. I would say starting 3 or 4 years ago, we started seeing YouTubers as headlines at some of the paranormal conferences, which is interesting and fun. You can definitely see a shift happening for sure, where you're getting away from the Stanton Friedmans of the paranormal and moving over to the entertainment side of the paranormal. So that's the big thing that that is happening now, which I guess it'll be interesting to see what it turns into next.
Yeah, it kind of moved from symposiums and things like that into a more entertaining venue, a trade show, so to speak. And I think a lot of paranormal people in the paranormal, maybe in groups, still come. But in terms of a table, a lot of them, they're not selling anything. I mean, we stopped having a table because there's only so many EVPs I can play for people. You know what I mean? It's like nobody wants to hear that anymore, especially around 1,000 people. But that's definitely been a paradigm shift. The networking here, and I agree. I think it may not be all about the internet, but the lion's share of that is just, bringing everybody a little closer together. And again, finding people, like-minded people who just for a couple of days aren't judging. They just want to come and have a good time and talk to people and be entertained. It's like, so let them. Yeah, that's my attitude about the whole thing. If you're having fun, life's too short anyway. If this is your thing, you do you.
Yeah.
And I think even before the internet started up with, the proliferation of easily communication and getting the word out when these are and where they are, I really think it was the advent of all the television shows that drove the popularity, that took, the paranormal investigators and the ghost hunters from those creepy people that are into ghosts and stuff that, that don't really get talked about or talk with other people. Well, no, because that's what it kind of was back when I was a kid. I mean, people like my age and Ken's age and George's age we're old enough to know that. What's that?
What's that supposed to mean?
You know exactly what it means. You've got as much gray hair as I do.
Seasoned. He's trying to use the word seasoned, Ken. Seasoned investigator.
Yes, seasoned, like salt and pepper, seasoned. But but the advent of the television shows on Discovery Channel really brought forth the popularity and brought this entire field to the masses, so that people who maybe were interested, well, that was okay, and they could show their interest in it without being ridiculed or like, oh my God, you're into ghosts, a lot more easily. And then after that, the advent of the internet, after it was invented by our I'm sorry. Once the internet came about and we started getting communication that way, it really drove the popularity. And I've had some interesting discussions with friends regarding what is the future of these shows, because the future of the shows on TV is going down. There's not as much television viewership as there was, and it's being pushed more towards YouTube and these other social media streaming networks, where it's going to. And is it going to be able to maintain the popularity to get the number of people in to run some of these larger shows, or are they going to be smaller? I think that's kind of an interesting thing. And how are they going to adjust so that they can still have these conventions? Are these big conventions going to fade away over the next couple of years?
Yeah.
I hope not.
The next thing I want to talk about, and this is something I actually had with George in mind, because I'm sure he'll want in on this. So I'm going to push back on something a little bit. And it's the scientific approach. And a lot of what we do, we like to say we do things scientifically. I prefer to say we use a lot of technology. It doesn't make you scientific, because you're using things with wires and lights and batteries. With that said, we hear it all the time. You're not using a scientific method. There's nothing scientific about it. Let me just say, while perhaps the entire scientific method isn't being used, and I maintain it's impossible to do in what we do, there is more science being used than people get credit for these days, because people are taking advantage of information and software. I mean, I am a chocolate-covered bastard when it comes to analyzing data. I really am. I've got like 5 different programs I run these things through, but that's my problem. But I think that overall, people like to say it's pseudoscience. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. But we use more elements of the scientific method than people give us credit for. So I would like to go around the room and know how you guys feel about that. So have at it.
How is that with me in mind?
Because I know you like to get into the analytic approach of things.
Well, yeah, I think it's extremely necessary. The aspect of what we do, trying to be scientific, is to, create results that are repetitive each and every time. We tend to, again, accept things at face value with the 1 or 2 miracles that happen while we're doing an investigation. Regardless of what that fact is, if we see a shadow person, if there's physical manifestation, it's the consistency of it that we are seeking, but are to this date failing. And this is what we aspire to achieve. So yes, I mean, what is the empirical evidence? The empirical evidence is there's a lot of things happening we cannot explain. That's where it ends. When we try to find ourselves some sort of repetitive response with the equipment we use, with the procedures we use, with the location that we go to, we have failed up and including today. So we pursue. which is again, it's almost the definition of insanity in what it is that we do. But we look for that consistent result, and we go out time and time again. We go to the same location and different locations time and time again, with the aspiration of being able to finally figure out an equation, a scientific equation to what it is that we're connecting with. And so far, although we pursue, and there's a lot of us pursuing it, we have yet to find the proper ingredients to make that connection.
Well, I just want to say before I hand it off here that I have been to locations where I've got consistent results. I've been to other locations where I have not. It seems to me that the more you visit the place, the chances increase of, when I say consistent, I'm not saying every time you walk in the door, but I'll take 6 or 7 out of 10 any day that something happens like that. So anyway, what do you guys think?
As far as the scientific method goes, of course, you can't apply that 100% because, when you go into a location, it isn't always promised that, you're going to have a spirit there to answer you. And as far as, setting equipment up, of course, the buildings aren't, a sterile environment, and the list goes on and on. But like Ken said, you can apply the scientific method as best as you possibly can to these situations, so you get better results that are easier to distinguish. That something strange has occurred, whether it can be explained away down the road or not. That's one thing. But also, like Ken said, I think the amount of time you spend in a location kind of helps your cause a bit. I think the closest, to a scientific method in the paranormal that I've seen was the Pain House, because that was a place where, Rise Up spent, more than a decade there investigating literally hundreds and hundreds of times over and over and over again, using the same pieces of equipment, adding additional pieces of equipment, and collecting probably a year's amount of recordings and everything else, if you listen to it one after the other. And then, with what Satori and I do, of course, that's difficult to apply to unless you put us in a lab, which we're working on. We're working on getting into a sterile environment to try this. But again, the big variable, the big question mark is a spirit going to be there? And that's where you run into the repeatable problem. How can you, find an environment where this is completely repeatable unless you have a spirit trapped, in a bubble per se, where you could, keep doing these tests over and over again. So it's definitely been a big thought in Satori and I's mind on how to, try to document, what we do in a more scientific way. So we're working on it, but yeah, I think there's a lot of variables, and I don't know if we'll get to that point where, for a normal investigation where you have that perfect environment to apply this to.
Yeah, and Dan and Celine, if we're talking about spirit communication, I mean, this was the realm of intuitive, psychic, spiritualists. And then eventually we started using recorders. Say what you want about EMF meters, but we're taking barometric pressures, we're taking ambient temperature, we're using cameras, we're using 4K cameras. So to say that we're not at least trying to be scientific about our documentation, and then, there are sound programs we run this through. Yes, we identify things. Yes, we misuse some equipment sometimes. I don't debate that. But the effort is there. We're trying to use some type of systematic approach to this. And sometimes people write it off, and, we deserve a little credit for at least the effort.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of credit that has been earned by various investigators. I think some are better than others. And there are investigators trying to use the scientific method to go through there. And scientific method is form a hypothesis, figure out how you're going to test it, run the tests, repeat the tests, see if they're repeatable, your results are repeatable. But in our instance, we're trying to identify something that is invisible to us. So we can't see if that is there present when we're doing it every time. So it becomes very difficult. And it might be that we need to take the problem up and divide it down into smaller bites, smaller measurable bites, smaller little chunks that we can focus on to go forward and move there. And, I don't know how that is going to be defined. That's up to the investigators, what they're going to look at. But it might be, being more focused in what they're doing. There's all sorts of things. And there's lots of things that, like temperatures and barometric pressures and things like that. If we're saying that some of these fluctuations are due to spirits, and I think that that's absolutely true, if we have the digital recorders that can record the temperature of the room, and we see that the background, it's gradually rising, then we have this spike for 30 seconds and it goes up 5 degrees, and then it comes back down after a minute. That is an anomaly, and that is what we're looking for. And that could be barometric pressure, that could be temperature, that could be any number of factors that we can physically measure. And that event then becomes something, is what we're looking for. What does it tell us? What does we do? That is unknown. We don't know that. And to find the source of that anomaly, we don't know. And that's where we have to try to go through and figure that one out. And that's the crux of the problem, is it's hard to do that. And then to get repetitive results, they might not be exactly reproducible. The thing is, we look for reproducible results, and how you define reproducible is another thing. It might be that reproducible is that we have a temperature fluctuation in this that we see in this room periodically of at least 5 degrees or 6 degrees. I don't know whatever you want to have, and that might be the reproducibility factor of it, because we can't guarantee that, like Cody says, we can't guarantee that there's going to be a spirit there every time to do that. I mean, that's just not how it works. As investigators, we all know that. So it is very difficult to do that. And I think we have to go back to the design of the experiments. What are we trying to test, and what are we trying to prove to go through that? And to get from where we're at now to saying, yes, there's definitively ghosts here, we've proven it by the scientific method, we are still ages away from that. We're still back. We're taking little baby steps still. Things have improved greatly with the improvement of the equipment that we have. But I think we also have to go back to, and I'm getting back to this, I was never a spiritualist or a spiritual guy or into the gemstones or anything like that. But the more I do this, the more I have faith in that those are valid investigatory techniques, and that what some of these people are doing is absolutely valid. Do I think there's people out there that are completely pulling your leg? Yes. I'm sorry, but I think that is absolutely true fact, that there's 1,000 mediums out there, and there's probably 5 of them that really are truly mediums. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody, but hopefully all the good mediums are watching us right now, so I haven't offended any of them.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you addressed it in that way, Dan, because that's exactly how many of us on this screen have encountered somebody who says that they were pushed, shoved, punched. We've all had some sort of a physical contact sort of thing, but people who say they were lifted off the ground and thrown across the room. We've all heard at least one of those stories. And it's like, as many years as Ken been in this, that I've been in this, you, Dan, and also Cody, even for the most part, because of the frequency that he's been investigating, that to hear something of that magnitude and yet have no evidence behind it can get very, very frustrating. Back to the spirit part of it, though, there is something that we don't tend to add into the equation, and that is the rules on the other side. And that's something that we always have to consider when you hear a disembodied voice and we all stop and we all say, "Can you say it again? Can you do it again? We heard you." And you never get that follow up ever. Is there a rule behind that they have to adhere to? We just don't know what it is on the other side, rule book wise, like rule book for the dead and Beetlejuice. That just makes me say, you know, it doesn't make any sense. If you're making yourself heard, why can't you do it again? These are
Yeah.
the things that we still haven't been able to explore to such a degree, and yet you ask them to repeat on a flashlight session. You ask them to repeat on an EMF meter or a Mel meter, and you'll get repetitive responses. Those two just don't jive. You'll do it this way repetitively, but we ask you to do it that way, and then we could go down the rabbit hole again about, well, it's because it takes more energy. We don't know. We honestly don't know. We assume it, but there's never been a spirit ever caught on a digital recorder on a spirit rock that says, "I'd like to, but it takes more energy. I don't have enough energy."
Hmm.
It's all
Those are assumptions that we're making.
yeah. So we still don't know yet how it goes with regards to that. I mean, no offense, but again, those people out there who make claims that seem so outrageous, we need to have some sort of a consistency in those claims, whatever they may be. Again, something that they did, something that they said, someplace that they were, something that they had, equipment wise. They take a negative crystal or their very, very superstitious socks, whatever it is that created a scenario, duplicate it to see if it happens again. And it's just not some random event that is a great ghost story, but does not assist this field whatsoever.
Mhm.
And there's somebody just posted up a comment. I want to kind of address it a little bit, and regarding intelligent spirits, regarding residual spirits, and I think we can all agree that there's most likely both of them in this world.
Yeah.
And so, really, what we're talking about is more of the intelligent spirits than residual energy and residual spirits. And I don't know if you want to agree with me or not on that one, Cody. But a lot of what we're talking about would not apply necessarily to residual energies that are present.
Yeah, I think the big thing that is hindering us from moving on to the next step is equipment. I don't think any of the equipment, like if we really wanted to hone this into, a scientific, perspective, the equipment that we have just is not sensitive enough to move that forward. The way I kind of look at it is, those traffic cameras that, they if you speed past it, it takes your picture and then you get a ticket in the mail. Those cameras have all these variables going by every single day, hundreds, thousands of variables, cars going by different speeds. And then the camera knows when the car is going a certain speed to take that picture. And I think we need super sensitive equipment that looks at all of these atmospheric conditions to see, is there a change when a spirit enters the room? I think it's extremely minuscule, and our equipment isn't sensitive enough to detect that when it does happen. But we need to figure out what that is, and I think once we figure out what that is, I think it'll make it a lot easier for that camera to take a picture, or us to be notified that this has happened. I just don't think that any of our equipment that we use currently is sensitive enough, and we would need thousands and thousands of dollars to get the equipment needed to move to the next step. I think.
Well,
I think what happens is that science, as an entity, because this is what it is, and it's considered a pseudoscience, where science will use theory to pursue something that may or may not exist. In the paranormal, they're waiting for it to come to them. Like, prove it to me first, and then we'll go look for it. Whereas the idea of science is to theoretically wonder what if and then pursue that.
Pursue the
So
truth.
I don't know, maybe we have ourselves to blame. The way
Possibly.
we approach these things. I don't know.
I mean, there's been enough documentation recorded, both for social media investigators and mainstream media investigators, where they've put meters, EMF meters, all kinds of different equipment in front of the camera. It would go off, but nothing was captured around it. And it's the spectrum of the camera that is missing at this point in time. What particular spectrum would be able to capture a specter? And we still have not honed in on that yet. And we've tried everything from the FLIR to IR, and nothing seems to be dead on. And yet, and it impresses me when it is seen, but you question it as an investigator when you capture a full body apparition walking across that camera. Sometimes it's transparent. Sometimes it's just, you see kind of just the outline of it. Sometimes it's in the form of just kind of a misty white line. Sometimes it is completely opaque. You can see it's like a person walking across the room. And you question the validity on a lot of these things only because why did this camera capture something and others did not? And especially when there's been hundreds of other investigators in that same location, but they happen to capture it. Those are the things that still run in my mind as to whether or not we have researched it enough. You know, and in those particular cases, those investigators, you wish it was possible. And you wish we had that kind of database Ken and I have talked about now for 10 years, that you could put it in there. I was on this date. Here was the weather. Here was the barometric pressure. Here was the time of day. And here was the equipment that I used at that time, so that other investigators can come in, possibly duplicate, and see if they can also consistently catch that evidence. That's what we're missing.
Well, and we might not even know what we need, what type of meter we need to develop, because it might be something that hasn't even been considered yet as a good indicator. There might be some physical measurement, physical parameter that we can measure that would indicate an entity being present that we're not currently doing. Because before we had EMF meters and we weren't thinking about EMF, we weren't looking at EMF. And so, but this might be something. And, motion sensors and all sorts of other different types of sensors. It might just simply be we're not looking for the right type of technology to use in our investigations. And the problem is it's hard to figure out from a theoretical standpoint if we don't know about the body that we're trying to detect. So that if I work on mass spectrometers, and nobody here probably knows what that is, but we measure the mass of individual molecules, individual atoms, and that's what the instrumentation I work on. They're highly technical. They're used in laboratories, industrial labs all over the place. But it's a very specific thing. And one of the things that we've realized to make them more sensitive is that we had to look more frequently, because if we weren't looking for it, we couldn't detect it. And so we were able to increase the sensitivity so that we could collect data faster. So now we're measuring more often, and now we have a bigger signal. And now we're able to see it. And that was kind of a really breakthrough. And that happened with the advent of desktop computers. And faster computers made a huge improvement in the sensitivity of the equipment I work on now, so that now we can see down at parts per trillion and below parts per trillion levels we can detect on these instruments, which is astounding if you think about it. I can detect 1 part in a trillion in the sample of this molecule I'm looking for. I mean, that's incredible. One planet out of all the stars out there, we can find it and measure it in a sample. So we might just not know what we need to be measuring to make it, my point. And we have to figure that out. And it's kind of hard to figure that out if we don't know what it is we're trying to measure. It's hard to make the meter to measure something we don't know what it is that we're measuring. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, I mean, but it comes down to, the people who can do those kind of things need the sort of resources that we don't have. Normal don't has, and there are some engineers in this field that have done some remarkable things, and I mean, they're trying, but it comes down to that. We had a couple of questions I want to get to, but I want to maybe we can cover a couple more things that I had. I want to talk a little bit about ethics right now, and we talk about how things evolve. And as we're talking about it, obviously, we're not saying that necessarily things were better back then and they're not now. We're just talking about where the field is going. That's why we're here tonight. So I want to talk about ethics a little bit. And I found that ethics, in terms of the investigation process, okay, are far better now. I'm going to check that box than they were decades ago. It was the wild, wild west out there. You could trespass, you could go where you want, you could break into places. And now, in my mind, now you can look at ethics 7 different ways here. And ethically, there are a lot of things that are left to be desired. But in terms of doing what we claim we love to do and have a passion for, I think we've gotten so much better, at writing letters, contacting people, not trespassing. And granted, there are laws in place that certainly help that. But do you feel the same way? And I'm strictly at this point talking about getting access and your comportment and behavior once you're there.
Well, I definitely I agree. I mean, it definitely seems like we've evolved in a good way as a whole when it comes to the paranormal field and the urban exploration field. And I think social media actually has a big part in that. I think the court of public viewership. If you do something wrong, social media is going to let the world know that you did something wrong, and I think that might scare a few people into doing the right thing. So I think that has helped the cause for sure. Of course, the popularity of the paranormal field has also helped because a lot of these locations have learned that they can help their locations out now financially by welcoming individuals in. And all of these locations have adapted rules now, which in the past they were more lenient on waivers and what you can and can't do at these certain locations. So I think that has helped tremendously on kind of reining everybody in to follow the same guidelines as everybody else. So I think social media and the popularity of the paranormal in general has helped that situation evolve greatly over the years.
Quick stop in here. The time is down to 5 minutes. I already informed Bill that we'll probably go over briefly. So for our KGRA listeners, if you wanted to switch over in about 5 minutes to at Dead Air Nation, youtube.com/at Dead Air Nation, you guys will be able to continue to listen in and watch us on screen. So I'll give you guys a send off now, Bill, but we still got about 5 minutes left before we get to the end of the KGRA broadcast. Thank you guys for listening on those stations. And again, you can switch over to us at Dead Air Nation. Cody, very succinctly put, and it's very accurate on there too. But it's had to be controlled. Let us not forget that we've had social media explosions of people who are very, very successful on platforms who started off illegally breaking into locations. and then again, either wised up or realized that was not the direction to go. Yet at the same time, on the same page, at the same turn of the page, there are new proprietors at locations, including one you just recently spoke of, who promote more the negative content of a location that never had a history of negative content at that location. So there are still those bad eggs that are out there that, for the simple sake of sales, selling through fear, that they'll put that promotion out there. So it has improved unquestionably. From the ethics side, though, I think it is a bit of fear of exposure, but I wonder as to whether or not, again, if they're given that liberty, would they take it again? And my suspect mind just sits there and goes, or suspicious mind sits there and goes, yeah, they would. There are those out there that will be more than welcome to grab that opportunity to go out there and just raise Cain wherever they may be investigating. I don't know.
Well,
Dan, Celine?
this is a classy show, so we'll call it a deterrent.
Yeah.
Well, we had, I think that most likely, I think Cody's right that it is progressing and it's getting better. Overall, we had a location that we were actually trying to get Cody and Satori able to come in to investigate here locally, and they had a very bad experience with a local investigation group going in and not abiding by the rules. And this is within the past 5 years that this happened. And so the executive director of that facility just said, nope, we're not doing any more investigations of any type of any nature at the facility, which I was really kind of, I don't know if you remember it, because this was shortly after we first met you. Yeah, don't mention. And so that's kind of disappointing that there's still people, and they went in there and they weren't supposed to push it out onto social media, and they did against their wishes. And they went in kind of like as a shock thing, and it did not go over well. And so there's still some bad actors out there, unfortunately. I think.
There always will be, unfortunately, too, and that's the important. It's sad to see. I mean, I know a bunch of locations that have come and gone because of situations like that, and it's unfortunate. And sometimes it just takes time for them to kind of reset and the right person to approach them again when the time's right. But I don't know. I definitely see the shift in the urban, exploration, community and breaking and entering community. 90% of those people have been arrested, a time or two, and have shared that experience on social media, which has helped deter people from doing that. Like a lot of the people who used to even like going backstage at Disney World and off limits places like that, people have been trespassed for life and stuff like that. So I think they've kind of helped out the situation themselves by airing what has happened to them to help deter people from doing it again. But with any subject, you're always going to have the people that are outside of the box and are not going along with the rest of the flock, which definitely ruins it for the rest of us sometimes, which is unfortunate.
Shortcuts will get you every time. If you folks don't mind, I'm going to get to, we got like 3 questions in there. So the first one is from Erin, who said, I'd love to know your favorite piece of equipment. Which favorite piece of equipment, guys?
I like the static dome.
Yeah.
Static domes are really cool. I've had a lot of good results. Shout out to Bob Christopher with Vortex Ghost Gear. Those are awesome. So definitely cool piece. I love my EDI meter. It's one of those pieces of equipment that you just kind of set and forget. And It records all of its findings: barometric pressure, humidity, temperature, vibration, all different things. So I've definitely turned, talking about evolving personally, I've turned to the equipment that you don't really pay attention to, and just kind of set it up and let it go. Stuff like the static domes and the little flux meters that kind of like a trip line, the trip wire, all different stuff like that just alert you if something's going on around it. So you can do other stuff, well, instead of paying attention to the equipment. That's the type of equipment I think people should use more. Stuff that isn't so much hands-on anymore, that you just kind of set up around a room, and so you can pay attention to yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. We have to agree that static dome is probably our favorite piece of equipment as well.
Yeah, no, just the regular recorder.
For me, it's go ahead, George. You're going to jump in. Go.
It's probably in the last 2.5 years, it's Cody and Satori. If it has to be created, then the next level would be definitely Spirit Box, whether it's used during an assess method or just out loud. I've had way too many great encounters doing that particular device, so I'd like to experiment more with it. But it's enjoyable. It really is something that I enjoy using. Looking for that redundant response, looking for repetitive response, and trigger words, and it just seems to continue to astound me.
And all you need is 4 AA batteries for both of them.
Yeah. 3 on top, 1 on the bottom.
That's it. Favorite piece of equipment. Everybody in the group will tell you something different. Julie, cameras. For me, it's a recorder because I'm more of a conversationalist during investigations where I'm trying to create dialogue. So, recorder for me. Next question, Joe Frezzo. What's one of the best pieces of advice you've received? I'll start this time. It sums up everything. It came from John Zaffis, but I can't repeat it on this show. without getting us canceled. A snack. Can't work without a snack. Yeah, John gave the best piece of advice. I can't repeat it in mixed company or good company. So, but it kind of sums up, if you're going to have longevity in this field, you need this attitude. So you could probably figure out what he told me, but I don't know. Guys, advice. Who gave you best advice when you were just a wee lad or lass as far as the paranormal?
Well, common sense is a big one that you have to have common sense when you're going into a location. That's probably one of the biggest ones. Do whatever you think you're doing is right, as long as you're being honest with what you're doing and trying to help people. Then just keep doing that. There's going to be a lot of people that try to tell you what they think is the right thing to do and what they think is right, but only you know what you should be doing and what is correct. So common sense is a big one.
I'd have to say that I don't even know if somebody gave it to me, but the best piece of advice I picked up in looking at this stuff and going through it is planning out what types of questions and the types of questions you're going to ask during like a EVP session is ahead of time. When I first started doing this, I was always stumped, like, oh my God, what am I going to ask? What am I going to ask? And Dustin gave me great advice last night that I heard that's on these lines in how you ask the questions.
ACDC?
What's
Black
that?
and black.
I thought that was Hell's Bells coming up here.
Oh, that's my mantle clock again. We have an antique mantle clock that still runs. Yeah.
We got a lot of antiques here. I I always say to everybody who is out there, and it's not so much I've got advice, it's more of just be true to yourself. And that is it. Just be true to you. You've heard it once, haven't you, Cody?
I don't know how many times you said that.
I wanted to bring this up. What you guys missed by not being Patreon members is we had the privilege last Monday. Dan gave us a tour of their haunted items in their home, and quite spooky stuff. Very interesting stuff, also historical stuff. But we appreciate that. And you guys join Patreon. You can go back and look at those episodes also. I got to go with Ken. John Zappis gave me on the show some really sage advice at the time. Don't take it home.
Yeah.
You do what you do, and you shut it off when you come home. And
that could have a couple of meanings.
Yeah.
You will always be hated. Aw, really? Oh, geez.
I know.
I was splitting my attention here. I told you in chat, my grandson had come in and handed me a snowball. So I had to deal with that for a little bit. So we got about 4 inches of snow out here, and it wasn't snowing when the show started.
Wow.
Here's a compelling question from Jeff Hilton. How you doing, buddy? If you use several flawed pieces of equipment at separate times and still get the same responses to the same questions, does it then become acceptable? It sounds, Jeff, like you're saying garbage in, garbage out, right? In plain English, right? I don't know. I mean, I guess if they're flawed, is there a piece of equipment that isn't flawed? I guess would be my response. I mean, there are foibles to everything, you know, so
I think it's better to use all of the flawed pieces of equipment at the same time rather than separate, because then I think you'd have a better understanding if something strange is happening, if multiple flawed pieces of equipment are going off. And likewise with equipment that we think works great. I think using them separately and still asking the same question, you're still running into those variables of, is it a spirit or is it, some normal explanation? That's why I think using them all at the same time would give you a better understanding if multiple things are correlating with each other.
Yeah, the idea of multiple pieces of equipment. If you're going to use equipment, that's a sound way to go about it. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I don't know what he means by flawed pieces of equipment. Flawed in that it's not appropriate for what he's doing, or that it's not working properly. I mean,
I think he asked that when we were talking about like the flashlight and stuff like that. So I think like equipment that that has
questionable.
I guess gives questionable results.
Yeah, then yeah, but even as everybody has said, using it all at the same time is better, I think, than going through and doing it at different times. I mean, typically if we're doing an investigation, we have most everything going set up and out at the same time. We might have everything out. I mean, we don't usually have everything out, but we usually have 3 or 4 pieces of equipment out that we're doing an investigation with.
And we have to consider that this equipment's all man-made. If you took, something akin to Cody and Satori, but you took 26 REM pods and laid it out in front of every letter of the alphabet, all right, there is the possibility that some of those REM pods are going to malfunction.
Yeah.
You're just still not going to get the consistency, because it's not just simply what the spirit is attempting to do, but what that equipment is intended to do and failing at doing so.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's everything can be looked at as flawed because it's not consistent. except for the
The most-
paranormal couple. They're perfect.
The most dependable, one of the most dependable things we have is our computer, right? As far as the tech that goes into it, that never messes up, right? Computers,
Uh,
computer, right?
and everything's true. That's where I met my French model.
And yet the weird part about it, when we talk about our phones, the urban legend, and I've actually had it happen to me as well, where you got messages from beyond on your phones. We've heard that on multiple occasions using that technology. I got the most paranormal horror story, which I don't really address as much as I should, on Christmas Eve on my home phone. Only 18 days into living here, and the phone rang, and the number was 666-6666. And I just let it ring the voicemail because I'm like, screw that, I'm not answering that. And the voicemail message was, give us the girl. Unknown that the fact that at the time my girlfriend and her daughter were living with me, so I don't know which one that they were addressing. Contacted that number back, and it went to some paper company in New Jersey.
Yeah, it's
Weird stuff that comes across.
That was kind of a scam, I think, that people were running that wanted to keep you on for a certain amount of time because then they get your number, they get some data. You know, in other words, if you respond, they dial numbers randomly.
I've never heard that.
Lottery, and if they can get you to stay on long enough, you know,
give us the girl as the voice. I don't buy that excuse at all. It was just very unique, very bizarre. And then of course Amanda calling my phone from her cell phone after she had passed. I mean, things of that sort are still you wonder again. And what is the mathematics? Why that, but not hit this REM pod each and every time for me, or this particular device? Again, we have not figured out the formula yet, and I don't know whether or not we ever really will. There's only one consistency, and one half of that is on screen right now, and that's still to me astounding. Again, to such a degree that Ken keeps me at bay from them.
Yeah, well, we have to. He's got to ride shotgun here. So, one other thing, if you guys want, we'll cover. I don't want to, keep everybody all night, but psychological experimentation. I want to talk a little bit about that because I've said for the longest time, the most under-investigated thing we have is the human mind. And I still maintain that's going to be the largest jump if we figure that out, rather than the next piece of equipment that has a motherboard on it. So there's a little bit of that with sensory deprivation that we're doing. I don't always see it done right. Whether that's the Estes method, whether that's the Gansfield experiment, where we're trying to stimulate different parts of the brain, like the limbic region, which they say, if stimulated, it can result in feelings that you're not alone. A religious experience, hallucinations, all sorts of things like that. So we on the right track with that? I know that these aren't necessarily lab experiments. Some of them have been. But how do you feel about things like the Estes method and sort of things that have built up over the last few years here, where we're starting to do a little bit with the human mind?
Well, and remote viewing, psychometry, things like that too.
Yeah. I mean, you can put that all in there. Psychometry, I don't know. I'm not sure where I'd categorize that, George, if that's metaphysical or whatever. But anyway, I mean, dealing with the human psyche, I think, is an important thing that not everybody has the acumen to do it. I'm not a psychologist. I don't pretend to be one. I'm not a scientist either. But how our brain perceives these things I think, is a huge question. How one person can see something, someone doesn't, someone gets a message telepathically, and I know people will laugh at that term. Psychokinesis, telepathy. I understand, I get it. But where do you think we stand with that? Should we do more? Should there be more of that done?
For us to do it as paranormal investigators, I don't think I would ever attempt to do anything like that outside of like the Estes method. I think the Estes method is a great method. There's a story there, Ken, I'll have to tell you next time, not now, about the Estes method. But I would not feel qualified to go into that realm of type of investigation. I think there's more to it. I think that's something that they are looking at scientifically more so than others. And I think I have to completely agree with you that we know so very little about the brain and how it stores information and how it perceives information and how we process it. It's one of those things. It's like where I'm at with the mediums. Yes, there are people that are mediums, and they and psychics. They know that, and they know that the real ones know who they are. And there's a bunch of them out there that aren't really up to it because it's hard to prove one way or the other with that, because we take it on faith that everybody's being honest with us.
Speaking of faith, why is it that you guys right now look like you're broadcasting from heaven?
I think it's
I'm an angel.
Yeah, right. I think that's just our curtains back there. She's got white sheer curtains behind us.
Looks like God is looking down on you.
They knew they were coming on the show, so they surrounded themselves with white light because they were afraid of what they may experience here. So,
well, I was trying to get my background to be the number 4 murder scene from Jack the Ripper, because we visited that this September, and it's a really cool building, but it wasn't working out well because I don't have a green screen. So
that's the prostitute in the back room, right?
Number 4 was, this was just right outside of that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Mary Eddowes, where the scarf was left, the shawl, I should say. They call them the shawl. That was an interesting tour. That was a great thing, but that's kind of off the subject. But yeah, the psychic aspects of this, all that stuff. Do I think it can happen? Can exist? Yeah. I just don't think it's all that common, and I don't know how we tap into that. And I think we won't know until we know more about the brain, and we might be able to do more with that.
Yeah. I have a question, though, for Satori, who's off camera. Satori, when Cody drives, do you surround yourself with white light?
I just pray a lot.
Good answer.
I try.
In a crash helmet. Yeah, no, there's so much.
My wife surrounds herself with bright light. I almost ran her over one day, but that's another story.
The aspect of what the mind has potential to do. Look, we know this for scientific fact that if you're depressed, mentally having problems with depression, that your body can react to that depression. The same thing if you're overjoyed, that dopamine can do miracles to your body. They've even had studies with that with cancer patients. So what can the mind do externally beyond that in that thought process when you're doing an investigation? And if you are allowing yourself to either open up or you're allowing yourself to project just from the mind, we have now seen and have collected enough evidence that these entities, these spirits, whatever you want to categorize them at, can in fact read minds. They can. So it's not necessarily that they're going into your brain, but maybe what you're emitting is being caught up in that dimension, caught up in those waves. So the potential for what it could provide is just, it's incredible. But Cody?
One interesting thing that I've kind of started following over the past year or so, that isn't really, I guess, talked about in the paranormal field or associated, and it's very controversial, is DMT, the hallucinogenic drug. And there's been a lot of testing that's been being done with that in a controlled environment where individuals are mapping out literally a different reality when they're given this drug in a controlled form. These people who don't know each other, who have never met each other, are all seeing the same things. They're all mapping out an environment that each of them have seen without talking to each other. So I think the mind is very interesting, and it can open up doors that we have no idea how to do. I think we will find this out by accident, which I think has happened in this case. And you can research it. Just look up DMT and the mapping that's being done of these realities or realms or whatever you want to call it. So I think it's just interesting that that you're able to see this in the beings that people are seeing. Each of them claim to see these beings that are very geometrical in shape and things like that, which is interesting. So yeah, that's definitely something that I think absolutely has to do with the mind. And could it be nothing? Absolutely. But I just think it's interesting that multiple individuals are reporting the same thing without having contact with each other.
See, I would be afraid that, because I've never been, LSD guy, even back in the days, it's like I had mushrooms one time. I started having flashbacks to concerts that I never went to. So that was enough for me at that point. Is that anything like ayahuasca? That's an organic plant. They make a tea, you drink it, and you just you got to go off by yourself. I guess that's the thing. And
there was one gentleman who did, I believe it was DMT, who lived in, I mean, this could have absolutely just been a trip, but he lived a completely different life, got married, had kids, felt like he was gone for 2 years, and he was only out for like 10 minutes. So, but in the mapping of this world that he was in, other people have, seen the same thing. And the reason why they're doing these mapping, sessions, I don't know what you would call them, is because they keep going further and further out. Like if you think of it as a video game map, they're going further and further out and exploring what hasn't been mapped yet. So I just find it very interesting that this could have a paranormal connection as far as different realms or different I'm losing the word here, different realities that exist beyond now.
But not only are they different, but it's a shared alternate reality from people that don't know each other.
Yes.
That is experiencing the same world. That is really interesting.
Yes.
And really makes you wonder how that, because, and we've talked about this several times tonight, in how people's mental states and how they affect things and going into these investigations. And I think I'm very positive that if you're on an investigation and you're not in a good mental state yourself, you're going to have lousy results. You're not going to get any results at all. You have to be in the right frame of mind, and be, have a certain amount of openness about you and willingness to accept things that might be outside of your comfort zone, going into them. And a lot of that goes into some of these mind altering drugs that they go into. So maybe we all need to take something before we go on an investigation so we have better results.
Does,
I can't believe you said that.
does anybody, you know, if you have anything else that you would like to bring up, anyone at all, you go right ahead. I was just curious as to when you're a kid, you see people drive, you're in the back seat when people driving, and you can't wait to drive, but it's a whole different thing when you get behind the wheel. So where did you come from? Is the way you thought about this, maybe as a child or as a youngin', and then when you finally get involved in it, what was the biggest, like, welcome to the paranormal moment? Not necessarily an event that happened, but when you're like, holy crap, you know, like, I want to go out and do this now. Because that's a whole different thing when you got boots on the ground instead of reading about it in a magazine.
Or watching it on TV.
Or watching it on TV.
Yeah.
Miles to go before we sleep, as they say, and we've got a lot of different things to ponder here in the field still, a lot of things to debate here in the field still, but as Cody was saying earlier, I think we're progressing in the right direction. It's a slow direction, it's slow motion, but we're trying to find ourselves a better way of providing a service within this field. We're trying to aspire to the same goal, and hopefully we do achieve it eventually. But yeah, we are running 30 minutes almost past our normal time, so we're about to finish up here. I want to thank again Cody, Dan, Celine. Thank you guys for joining us. Satori off camera, thanks for joining us. Cody's
Thank
producer.
you for having us.
And we thank you guys so much as always. Ken, what do we got next week?
We're going to be welcoming Bill Hall from Connecticut, who wrote the definitive book about what has been called one of the most haunted houses in the country, 966 Lindley Street. This was a former Ed and Lorraine Warren case, and Bill was on the scene there, and we're going to welcome him in next week. I did an Extremely Strange on this about a year ago and dove into it. I had asked Bill. Timing wasn't right, but the timing's right now. And I can't wait to talk to him about this case next week.
Fantastic. All right. On behalf of Ken DeCosta, my name is George Lopez. Thanks you guys for watching. I'm going to try to hit this outro again. It didn't work for me last time. Let's see if it works this week. Thanks, guys, for watching. Our Patreon members, we'll see you tomorrow night in Town Hall. You guys take care. Thank you very much.
Bye.
And it doesn't. Ken, you hit the outro. See if it works from your end. Hit the outro. I mean, I could just do the closing. Ta-da.
It's not working. I'm going manual.
There we go. Hit it.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such a tease, bitten lips, bruised knees. I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad. After her there ain't no coming back. Wanna take a run at that. I think she's feeling me, turn it up a few degrees. My imagination of her body gets the best of me. Oh gosh, she's such a tease, bitten